Hey everyone, Greta here. Today we are going to talk about the arm variation for people who are learning Pincha Mayurasan. Traditionally in Pincha Mayurasan, we would do this. Whether palms, the forearms are on the mat, elbows on the mat, shoulders rub the elbows, and then we kick up. However, for a lot of people, this is very, very unnatural. Well, it's unnatural in the very first beginning, in the first place, but this is exceptionally unnatural because in our everyday lives, we rarely do this movement. Like we are not movement, but we rarely set up our arms like this, So that's why to a lot of people, especially for beginners in this inversion, trying to balance on our elbows is already very, very challenging. And having the base in such an awkward shape, it adds the difficulty level. So there are a few other options to try if you don't feel comfortable in this one. Before we go into details of the variations, let's take a step back and check out the anatomy for Pincha Mayurasan. In order to balance in the forearm stand, of course you need strong arms and shoulders, and there are a few muscles in the back that we need to activate in order to stabilize the shoulders. And those are the serratus anterior and also the latissimus dorsi. Those two muscles, big, and they are very, very important in Pincha because they help to make the shoulders stable and also to make sure that the elbows don't splay out. So if the elbows splay out, then this connection is lost. Everything goes right up into the neck and shoulder, the upper traps. And that's why if you feel these guys are working a lot harder, it's hard to balance. Either elbows splay out, you feel heavy, you would just collapse into the shape, or maybe you won't even be able to kick up. And the other muscle, the latissimus dorsi, helps to keep the shoulders in place. So when you kick up into Pincha, the shoulders don't jut forward so much that you face plant. So by having this information with you now, whatever variation in the arms that you choose, just make sure that the strength is coming and the power is coming from the upper back. You're spreading the upper back and not pulling the shoulders right into the ears. Because once you do this, you feel very short, you feel very compressed, and you won't be able to lift. One of the variations, lace the fingers, just like a headstand. So elbows underneath the shoulders, placing the hands down. This is easier because your fingers are connected. Once your body parts are connected, they can somehow share the load, and when you kick up, it should be quite easy. Another variation, very similar to the fingers lace, but you don't lace the fingers, so they're like Barbie hands. So you set up like this. The knife edge of the palm, outer edge of everything will be placed down. For this one, it's more natural and easier to feel the upper back spreading and shoulders pulling back when you are going up into a pincha. So again, you don't do this, but rather you stay like this. Another option, it might look very, very odd, even more odd than the traditional one, is this one. So you place the elbow down, it's the hairy side of the forearm down to the floor and the palms facing the sky. Now this looks extremely intimidating, but actually it's easier for the body to feel the muscles working, the proper muscles working for you to stay up in Pincha than this. Another variation is the palms, actually the thumbs are touching in this one, so they do the Pincha like this instead of spreading apart. Again, the concept is very similar to the headstand variation. The fingers lacing in variation, as the fingers are touching, it's easier, but then just be mindful when the thumbs do touch. Chances are, well, there's an easier chance for the elbows to splay out, because once the thumbs touch, it's very easy to call onto the traps to do most of the work. So just make sure that when you're doing this one, again, it's the upper back that is doing more of the work and not so much in the traps area that you feel everything collapsing. For all the arm variations, just make sure that Once you're here, you feel the upper back spreading and not coming in together. So imagine you're doing a cat and not a cow. Another thing to check is the force, the pressure that you're applying to the earth is vertically down and not coming forward like that. Like especially when you're kicking up, feel the elbows, the upper arms and shoulders pressing directly down to the floor just to keep the base stable. So when you're kicking, you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I am jutting forward and face planting. So moving on to props, the block. The block is definitely the most popular prop used in PINCHA aside from the wall. And I see a lot of people when they hold on to the block, they do this. So like that. Forming like a letter L, like framing the block. Actually, when you're using the block to do PINCHA, you would actually want to keep the thumbs relaxed. So just using the inner edges of the index fingers to press onto the block, like so. The reason why is because when you're framing the block, it's actually very hard to have the forearm pressing down and the elbows to press down to the floor. Whereas if your thumbs could relax, then you can feel the inner part of the arm able to apply the pressure down onto the mat. But when I get people to use a block, I generally would get them to have the forearms pressing into the block close to the elbows. It's not a squeeze, rather it's just a reference point that, hey, make sure that the inner side of the forearm close to the elbow could be touching the block so that they don't splay out. And once you're here, the thumbs cannot touch anyways, and if your elbows turn out and start to part away from one another, you instantly know. So for me, it's just easier as an indicator. Last prop is the strap. Now I have to confess, I'm not a fan of this prop in PINCHA at all, because the strap is basically doing what your body is supposed to do. I've seen a lot of people able to kick up into PINCHA with strap, but when they are not using the strap, they cannot kick up at all. And that's because once you have the strap wrapping around the arms, automatically or instinctively, in order to keep the strap around the arms, you need to push the elbows or push the arms out to keep the strap snug, right? So you're doing this movement. But without the strap, if you continue to do this movement, what will happen? Elbows out, chest collapse, you face plant. So that is why. The block is fine because you still have to have this hugging in motion. Strap, you push out. So that's why I generally don't teach it with the strap, unless, it's just for just for people to experience how it is to go upside down in PINCHA in the very first beginning of the stage. But afterwards, I won't use the strap. Plus, it's quite troublesome because you have to measure the strap. You have to measure the strap correctly, because if it's if the loop is too small, then there's no room for you to push out. And if the loop is too big, then it doesn't do anything, you just collapse. So that's why I'm not a fan of the strap. However, if you do use the strap, just make sure that it's closer to the elbow, not so high up to the armpit, because if you're too high up into the armpit area, then it feels very, very restrictive because it's so close to the throat and the face. You won't be able to really enjoy the experience. Those are the options that I could think of or I've come across. So whatever option that you choose, just make sure that you feel very comfortable and feel very safe to balance in. That's it. So I'll see you again soon. Take it easy.